with a Nigeria, a nation with a
All right, let me restart the share so we run this through real quick.
population of over 200 million people with only 35,000 doctors. That is one doctor to 53,000 Nigerians. Nigeria, a nation with a population of over 200 million people with only 35,000 doctors. That is one doctor to 53,000 Nigerians. The healthcare allocation is 3.5% of the GDP, $5 per person per year. WHO recommends 5%. This explains why our healthcare system is the way it is. Patients are not being attended to. Government hospitals are overcrowded. Health workers are overwhelmed. Private specialists are unaffordable. Something has to be done. To tackle these issues, Health for Nigeria believes the healthcare sector needs an inspired and well-motivated group of young leaders to canvass and act for excellence in the healthcare standards of Nigeria. Our team of healthcare professionals and leaders are committed to improving access to healthcare for all Nigerians, especially our children. With our nurses in all basic schools in Nigeria, we give children basic health education and support across Nigeria. Health for Nigeria, health equity for all Nigerians.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon again, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Adamove Osho. I'm the program manager with Health for Nigeria. And today we're having a lecture on communicating for development and impacts being taken by our guest lecturer, Mrs. Bunmi Olatunji. So I'll just briefly introduce Health for Nigeria. We're a nonprofit organization focusing on ensuring that we have affordable and accessible healthcare to all Nigerians across the country, as you saw in the video. And right now, our flagship project is a nurses school project, which is putting nurses in schools in rural areas across Nigeria, again, trying to foster community engagement in health, as well as improving the health situation and kind of health awareness and education for students across the country. So I'll hand over now to Olumide Obe, who is in charge of our leadership and development program, as well as his lecture series, and he will go on with the lectures. So Olumide, please, over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Osho. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Olumide Obe. I'm the leadership and development consultant for Health for Nigeria. So once again, I want to thank you all for attending the 5th edition of our lecture. This journey started in May, and we had the first series in May, which is an introduction to the Travel Lead ECG. The second one, basic life support, financial literacy, importance of data analysis, and here we are with the 5th one, communication for development and impact. I am 100% sure that this lecture will impact your professional life and personal lives positively. So without wasting our time, and I would like to invite and introduce our founder, Professor Abimbola Kitadi, who will introduce our guest lecturer. So we'll go straight into the lecture. Thank you so much. And over to you, Prof. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Osho, and thank you, Mr. Obe. Thank you, everyone. Once again, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. We're actually very excited about this presentation for several reasons. But before I go into introducing our guest speaker, I heard that one of my childhood classmates passed away yesterday in Nigeria. And as you know, that's very sad. That's not the kind of news you want to hear when you wake up first thing in the morning. I think it's just an opportunity to remind all of us once again, you know, that COVID-19 is real. If you have access to the vaccine, please take it, and also just find ways to keep yourself safe. Wear masks, socially distance, whatever you need to do, please do. That's part of what we're responsible for at Health for Nigeria. Without further ado, it brings me tremendous pleasure to introduce our speaker this morning, Mrs. Bunmi Olatunji. She's passionate about inspiring everyone to discover and maximize their God-given talents. When she's not working really hard, in her day job, she's the CEO of Accolade Consulting, which is a firm specializing in project management training. When she's not teaching project management or leading the volunteer workforce at her church, which is Jesus House DC, she spends time developing herself and everyone around her, encouraging them to be their very best selves. So I've actually witnessed this presentation before, or at least a different version of this, and I was truly inspired. So we're very excited to have her here today. Some personal nuggets about her. She's married to her husband, Mr. Segun Olatunji. They're blessed with 3 children, ages 13, 12, and 10. So you can tell she has her hands busy. And if you have any questions and if you want to reach out to her directly after this presentation, you can do so at info@accoladeconsulting.com. That's info@accolade is ACCOLAY. What I've negated to share through my introduction is, we like to separate family and business, in trying to maintain professionalism. But I'll be remiss if I didn't mention that this is my older sister who, charity begins at home, so when I listened to her speak, I thought this would be a fantastic opportunity to actually get her to educate us on communication also. We understand the importance of it. And for Health for Nigeria, our goal is to not only be the face of healthcare for Nigeria, but also a hub for communicating healthcare, disease prevention, and healthcare awareness for Nigeria. So Mrs. Olatunji, thank you very much for being here today, and the floor and the stage is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so very much, Dr. Akintade, for that very warm welcome and introduction. I'm very excited to be here to speak with you all about communication, effective communication. It's a passion of mine, as I would like to see everyone succeed in this area, because I believe that communication is a very important aspect of our lives. I would like to apologize on the onset because I'm having some technical difficulties. There's a message here saying that there's some low system resources, so it's making it difficult for me to pull up my presentation. I didn't have that problem earlier this morning. So if you would please give me just a minute to figure out what's going on, then I would, because I think it's important that you see the visual as I do the presentation instead of just hearing it. So please give me 1 second as I figure this out very, very quickly. I'll hand it over to you again, Dr. Akintade, as you give me a minute to figure this out.
All right, thank you very much. And also, if you're able to send us the slides, we can maybe pull it up and help you advance it as necessary.
Okay.
So for everyone here and present today, we've been doing these lecture series every month. And even though originally we thought, this might be a little too much, but at the same time, we recognize that there can be enough communication about healthcare challenges and, not only specific healthcare topics, but just professional topics that impact healthcare professionals too. So if you have recommendations or thoughts of topics you'd like us to present on, please let us know. As a professor at University of Maryland, obviously, I am connected with many healthcare professionals that I can recruit. And even before I go that far, I can even look within my own network, even within my own family, and identify experts in certain aspects. So please let us know. Mr. Asha, while we wait, you can sort of play that intro again, just to give us a couple of minutes.
Nigeria, a nation with a population of over 200 million people with only 35,000 doctors. That is one doctor to 53,000 Nigerians. The healthcare allocation is 3.5% of the GDP, $5 per person per year. WHO recommends 5%. This explains why our healthcare system is the way it is. Patients are not being attended to, government hospitals are overcrowded, health workers are overwhelmed, private specialists are unaffordable. Something has to be done. To tackle these issues, Health for Nigeria believes the healthcare sector needs an inspired and well-motivated group of young leaders to canvass and act for excellence in the healthcare standards of Nigeria. Our team of healthcare professionals and leaders are committed to improving access to healthcare for all Nigerians, especially our children. With our nurses in all basic schools in Nigeria, we give children basic health education and support across Nigeria. Health for Nigeria, health equity for all Nigerians.
Thank you, Mr. Osho. I'll go ahead and share my screen now.
Nigeria.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Dr. Bim, for helping with that. All right, once again, very excited to be here to speak with you about communicating for development and impact. I will be sharing with you today for the next hour, and I'm hoping that we would make this a very interactive session. So please feel free to put questions in the chat. Feel free to speak up if you have any questions. All right, can we go to the next slide, please? All right, so we have a pretty full agenda this morning on communicating with impact. So the first one, what we'll be talking about today is I'll be sharing with you communication goals and forms. Why do we communicate? What is our goal for doing that? What forms does communication come through or come in? I will talk with you very briefly about verbal and nonverbal communication, strategies for improving provider-patient communication. We'll talk a little bit about fillers. What are fillers? I'll talk a little bit about uptalk. What is that and how to avoid it? And then pauses and how to improve your pauses. We'll go into a time of questions. And even before the questions, I had something else there where I'll provide some takeaways, some homework, anything that would help you become great or better communicators. Next slide, please. All right, so our very first one is communication. Communication, I mentioned earlier that these skills are very, very important to everyone. You know, we are always communicating, even when we think we're communicating, or when we don't even think we're communicating. Communication comes through so many different forms. Our goal anytime we communicate is three things. You want to be clear every time you communicate, very, very important. I understand that the audience here, we have a vast range of audience. We have folks who are in the healthcare field. We have our nurses, our caregivers, our providers. We also have, you know, folks who are just interested in being better communicators. For every step, for everyone, your goal is to be clear. You want to convey your message using exact, appropriate, and concrete words. You also want to be concise. You don't want to be verbose. You don't want to go on and on because people lose interest and people lose focus when you go on and on. And then you want to be confident when you convey information. Very, very important that you're confident because people will trust what you say if they sense that confidence in you. A lot of times we're not confident even when we speak because sometimes we don't know a lot about the information that we're talking about, but learning as best as we can what we're talking about and trying to be confident when we deliver our message is definitely important. So the three goals for communication are clear, concise, and confident. So think of those as the 3 C's for communication. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier that communication comes in many forms, and a lot of times we're communicating even when we don't know that we're communicating. Communication comes through verbal. When you speak, I'm speaking now. So the sounds, the language, the tone of my voice is all part of the verbal. Oral is also when you're listening or you're hearing somebody speak. Your nonverbal, those are the facial expressions, your body language, your posture when you are speaking. That's all part of your communication. And then of course, your written, where you write your journals, your emails, your blogs, your text messages. And then of course, visual signs. Sometimes it's important to break up words with pictures, with symbols, because this also helps convey your message. So at every point in time, if you need to communicate and you want to communicate effectively, it's always very important that you add or you mix it up. Keeping in mind these different forms, the verbal. How do you sound? What is your pitch like? Do you sound low? Do you sound too low? Do you sound bossy? Do you sound empathetic? Are you nonverbal? What are your expressions? I know that sometimes it's a cultural thing, but to be a great communicator, eye contact is very important. I know that growing up in certain cultures, they say don't look people in the eye. But to be great communicators, you got to look folks in the eye, because that's where trust is also formed. When you're talking to somebody and you're looking every which way, they're not going to trust you. Or if you come into an office and you want to talk to somebody and they're busy, all right, I'm listening and doing other things, it doesn't show that they are engaged or they are listening in. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, I talked earlier about sounds. Extremely, extremely important. Your volume, when you speak, do you come across like you're shouting? Are you loud or too loud, or are you too soft? So when you're too loud, this could be that, it could pass on the impression that you have a dominating nature. You're commanding. People don't like to feel like you're shouting down on them or you're speaking down on them. People like to feel like, that they can have a conversation with you. I talked about pitch. What is your pitch? Are you too low? Are you too high? A high pitch comes, across as unpleasant. And when you're frightened, that's when sometimes you have a high pitch. It makes it very difficult for you to communicate effectively. You go through those. I talked about tone. So your tone of voice can send positive or negative signals. When you have that tone, the tone defines the role that you put yourself in. You may have an authoritative tone, you may have an aggressive tone, you may have a sarcastic tone, you may have a hurt tone. What kind of tone do you want? You want to have an assertive tone. You want to have a tone that carries confidence. You want to have a tone that carries authority. You don't have to be a person in official authority for you to be able to carry that authoritative tone. It just simply means that you know what you're saying, you know what you're doing. It makes you come across as confident. I mentioned earlier, please feel free if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, anything that you want to ask, feel free to put that in the chat. All right, so we'll go to the next slide, please. I talked about nonverbal. The nonverbal is your facial expression. I talked about your body language, your posture. People form impressions of how you come across through nonverbal communication. So quick question in the chat. I mentioned on here that distracting nonverbals diminish, but confident nonverbals add. I've mentioned what, in my previous slides, I mentioned what nonverbals that add. I've mentioned what they are. I've given you examples of those. In the chat, I want to see if you're following. What nonverbal ads did I mention? What did I say it's good for nonverbal? Go ahead and put that in the chat if you were following. And then also, I'd like to hear from you. What would you consider distracting nonverbals? How do they diminish? Awesome, thank you very much. You were following eye contact. Yes, that's a confident nonverbal that adds to your conversation. It helps you become a better communicator. What about distracting nonverbals? Anybody? What are examples of distracting nonverbals that diminish your conversation or your communication, effective communication? Yeah, pacing, fidgeting. Yes, Kenny. I see that Kenny raised having your hands folded. Yeah, some people mention that if your hands are folded, it could mean that you're being closed off, you're being defensive. Yeah, if somebody comes into an office to talk to you and they're standing with their arms, folded, that could be a distracting nonverbal, because right away, if I'm sitting down, I'm already on the edge because I'm not sure what's going on. Yeah, playing with your hair. Yeah, that comes across as I'm not interested in this conversation. When they're not paying attention, you're talking to me and I'm typing, oh yes, I'm listening. Yes, those are some of the things that are very distracting. If they're doing other things, they're fidgeting, they're doing so many different things. Those are all distracting nonverbal communication or that diminish the effectiveness of communication. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you all for participating. Next slide. So on the coming out of what that little exercise that we just did, I will be sharing some strategies with you. These are some strategies that will help your nonverbal. Using direct eye contact. We talked about that and somebody had that in the chat. Very, very important. You always want to make direct eye contact when you are speaking or listening. If somebody's talking to you, even if you're not the one speaking, you always want to listen by making direct eye contact. You want to strive for this for 80% of the time in conversations. If you're having a conversation with someone, you want 80% of the time, you want to make sure that you're providing eye contact. And then during presentations, as I'm presenting now, I'm trying my best to keep an eye on the screen so that I'm making that eye contact. You want to do that 99% of the time during presentations. If you're doing your public speaking, if you are in front of everyone, you are in front of a huge group of people, you always want to make sure that you are making that eye contact. Extremely, extremely important. Another thing also that that adds is when you smile. It's the most amazing thing. It's a nonverbal, but when you are speaking and you smile, confident people smile. And studies show that smiling actually makes you look more intelligent. So the next time you have a presentation, I'm sure you would have, of course, prepared for your presentation, or you have to speak in public, try smiling. It makes you approachable, and it also makes you appear more intelligent. So practice smiling a little bit as you talk, but you want to be genuine. You don't want to be smiling for no reason, but when you are speaking, if you smile when you speak, it makes your words come out even a little bit more palatable. And then your gesture, when you speak, gestures add emphasis to your ideas. They also make you look more confident. I'm sure if you've seen people who have, do huge presentations, the presidents of the country or people who in technology who are speaking to a vast array of audience. They are there using their hand, they are speaking, people are leaning in and listening to them. So that's another way. These are all nonverbal. When you lean in, when you speak, when you gesture, when you smile, when you make eye contact, these are all nonverbals that actually add. Next slide. All right, so here I'll be sharing some statistics that a lot of us may not be familiar with. So you'll be very amazed that the words that we speak only account for 7% of our communication. Very interesting fact. Only a small percentage, 7% of our communication is down to the actual words that we use. The rest of it actually has something to do with our verbal, our nonverbal, what we do with our bodies and the way that we say something. And this is called paralinguistics. So only 7%, people are only listening to what I'm saying 7% of the time, but they're paying attention to my body movements, to my voice, to my tone, to my pause. So 38% people are listening. What is my pitch like? Is it high? Is it low? Am I talking too fast? Am I talking slow? Do I seem calm? Am I mellow? What is my tone like? What is my inflection? Am I excited? Because you can tell if people are excited about what they are talking about. You sense that the enthusiasm about the way that they deliver the information. You can tell this person is excited about this topic. Those are things that people listen to. And then, of course, we talked about that same body language, your eye contact, your facial expression. If I'm frowning while I'm speaking, you may be wondering what is wrong. It may, of course, get in the way of the words. The facial expression, posture. Are you sitting up? Your gestures, your appearance, your proximity. People don't like you to stand too close to them when they're speaking. Give people, a safe distance. And then appearance, of course, is very important because people always judge the entire package. Extremely, extremely important that we take time for this. Only 7% of our words count. The day I found that out, it changed, the way I viewed communication. Of course, what you are saying is still very important. It's important that you know what you're talking about because people are going to pick that up. If you say something that it's not factual, people are going to pick up on that. But if your words are factual, definitely try adding the paralinguistics and the body language to it for effective communication. Next slide, please. All right. So I'm going to be talking very quickly about the art of positive communication. This is very, very important. And this one should be taught to everyone that we come in contact with because this is very, very important. All right. When you meet people, people don't care. There's a saying that people don't care about what you have to say until they know that you care. It's extremely, extremely important that we follow this art of positive communication. When you meet someone, the first thing you want to do is to create them. It's called create, but how do you create a connection? By greeting. You want to greet to create human contact. Hello, how are you doing today? It doesn't take anything from you. So you want to create a connection by greeting. That's the first thing you want to do when you meet somebody. And then you want to discover. The next thing you want to do is you want to discover. You want to ask questions to discover the unknown. Very, very important that you do that. You ask to discover the unknown. All right. The next thing you want to do is you want to affect. You want to affect the person that you're speaking with. How is that you can do that? By complimenting them. You can affect them by complimenting them, because this affects their people's sense of self. Find something. Don't be disingenuous. Don't come up with something. But trust me, we can all find something if we look for it. If there's something that you've noticed, you can compliment them. Oh, wow, you look beautiful today. Oh, I love your hairstyle. Something, compliment them. And then disclose. I don't know if you've met people who they have a knack for communicating with you. And when you're done with the communication, you find out that you have shared your entire life history with them and you have not picked up one thing from them. The best communication, the most effective communication is when it's a give and take of dialogue. I disclose something about me that I'm comfortable disclosing, and then you disclose yours as well. Very, very important. And then when you want to deepen, so that's the disclose, when you deepen the relationship by us sharing. A lot of times we find out that we have a lot of things in common. And then even if we don't have things in common, we get to appreciate the difference in others. So that's where we disclose to deepen our relationships. And then you give to encourage. So when you encourage, you give support. You give in so many ways. By encouraging someone, you give of your time, you give of encouragement. So you support them in whichever way. It's a continuum. And then you transcend. How do you transcend your relationship? By listening. You want to listen to transcend differences. When you listen to what others have to say, I'm sure that some of us may have met folks who, all they want to do is talk. They are not listening. And they are sometimes, we are like that, where we're listening so we can give feedback very quickly because we have something we must say. But a lot of times, it's better for us to listen, because when we listen, we gain something, we gain new things. I like to be in the business of listening, because a lot of times when I listen, I learn something that I haven't learned before, instead of being very quick to push something out. All right. Any questions about the art of positive communication? No? All right, so we'll go into our next slide. Okay. All right. So these are some tips. Next slide, we'll go into, I'll bring it in, honing a little bit more on the healthcare field, but this one is just tips for honing your communication skills. Number one, you want to respect yourself. When you respect yourself, you come across as confident. Others see that. So very important that you respect yourself. Very, very important that you respect others. When you respect other people, it comes across also in the way you communicate with them. You're not looking down on them. You are looking at them as someone that you can, respect, someone that we can dialogue together. So you always want to start first with respecting yourself. It's very difficult to be assertive if you don't respect yourself. You want to be able to respect others. When you respect others, it comes right. You want to stay factual. When you have communication, you want to stay factual. It's okay if you don't know something to say, I don't know. Some people have a hard time saying, I don't know this information, but I will find out. Instead of saying, I don't know, I'll find out, they will rather make something up. And then it turns out to be a lie, which can affect others. So very important to stay factual. Nothing wrong with saying, okay, that's a great question. Let me get the answer and I'll get back with you. Posture, I talked about posture. Very important when you speak. If you are in a public setting, you want to stand straight up. You don't want to slouch. You want to make eye contact. I've always talked about that. Never make any assumptions. Compromise just simply means that sometimes we can agree to disagree. So when we're having a conversation or when we're communicating, it doesn't always have to be my viewpoint. Other people have experiences too that shapes the way that they see the world, or they see that topic. Being open to that. And then being firm. When you speak, if you are being firm just simply means that, when you're assertive, you are firm, you're speaking out of your knowledge, your experience. You can be firm about that, making sure that nobody else runs their own thoughts or ideas over yours, but also keeping in mind that we can both agree to disagree. And then more importantly, you always want to listen. want to listen. You know, there's a saying that there's a reason why God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, just so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so this slide, you know, speaks to, you know, this is for our nurses, providers. Thank you so very much for sharing that about the 10-second rule. Awesome, awesome. That's awesome. We'll talk about that also in pauses. All right, so strategies to improve provider-patient relationship, extremely, extremely important. When we're meeting with patients, when we're meeting with anyone, you always want to start with a warm introduction. Hello, my name is Bunmi Olatunji, and so glad to be here today. Whatever it is, if you're going to talk to a patient, you want to always start with a warm introduction. I think that's very, very important. Greeting your patient by name, oh my goodness. That instantly creates a connection. And that's for anyone, that's not just even for patients. When you, in a setting where you meet somebody for the first time, try to pay attention to their name and try to remember it. People love to hear their name. People feel an instant connection when you meet them and you remember their name, and then you reach, you know, you reach back out to them by name. Only very few people do that. And I always listen out for it. In the environment that I'm in, because my name, for me, you know, it's not a common name. So I notice that sometimes people don't like to say it because of the fear of pronouncing it incorrectly. But what I try to do is I try to take that away. As soon as I introduce myself, I try to find ways to help them remember it. And I notice that the people who remember it will always use it. Very, very important. As you meet with your patients, learn their name and then greet them by name. That forms an instant connection and a bond. And then make eye contact. I've been saying that. I know that sometimes that's hard to do because of sometimes our culture. In our African culture, sometimes they say, you know, it's good to look an adult in the eye. In the professional setting, you want to make eye contact at all times. It makes you very authentic. It puts you into that conversation. For providers, for the provider-patient communication, you will want to make sure that you always review the chart, of course, your patient's chart before entering the room where a patient is waiting, so that way you're conversant with the information that you are sharing with them. Very, very important. I know I would feel very comfortable if I felt that somebody knew about my information and they also knew, you know, what was going on with me. I think that's important. Another thing I was going to mention earlier about a nonverbal that distracts is when you come into a room and you stand. If I'm sitting and somebody is standing, you know, sometimes that could be imposing. When you come into a room, take a seat. If there's a seat, take a seat. By taking a seat, it brings you to the same level as your patient or to the person that you're speaking with, and it starts your tone on a good level. So I would say take a seat after entering a room, if you can, of course. Be engaged. We talked about being engaged, and there's so many ways to be engaged by making sure, we talked about that earlier, you know, of course, making sure that one, you know, there's the eye contact, making sure you are leaning into the conversation, you are listening 100%, try your best to be listening in. And then you also want to keep in mind that patients may be anxious. So when people are anxious, what do? You want to help calm them down. You want to be empathetic. You want to show empathy, you know, try to put yourself in their situations and find ways to help them, you know, to be less anxious. You want to listen, always listen and acknowledge patient concerns, whether they're founded or not. You want to acknowledge that. People like to feel heard. You want to avoid interrupting the patient if possible. Very, very important. You want to focus on the patient because, you know, that's what you're there for. And then you want to confirm understanding via teach back. And I'll talk a little bit about teach back in my next slide. Very, very important. When you confirm understanding, when you share something with a patient, any information that you share with them, you want something called teach back. You want them to repeat it back to you. You want to make sure that they do understand, one, how to take care of themselves and how to make sure that they are also educated regarding the process. And then you always want to provide your patients with written instructions. Very, very important that you do all these things. Any questions? Any questions about that? Nope. All right, let's go on to the next slide.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure, go ahead. We can go back to the previous slide.
Yeah, so could you go back to, the slide before this?
Yes.
Okay, yes. So you mentioned, I think it's the next slide, sorry. I think you mentioned something about, take a seat. In our environment, taking a seat could be considered as being rude, forward, or uncultured. You really have most of the time you have to wait to be asked to sit, irrespective of, irrespective of what you came there for. So what would be your opinion about this? Because it depends on who you're talking to, who you have gone to meet, and especially in, sorry to say, especially in the Southwest, especially when the person's way, way older, he just gets into his office and he's going to sit. Could be considered being rude or forward.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely say, definitely consider your environment. I was thinking here, for this provider patient one, I was thinking about those in the healthcare field, the nurses in the schools, where maybe, you're coming in to see a patient, maybe one of the young students or somebody, where or even in the hospital setting, if I'm a patient in the hospital and I'm laying on a bed, when a doctor comes in and has a seat, takes a seat, for me, that makes me feel comfortable because, that's a nonverbal that the doctor has communicated to me. He's communicated to me that he's reachable. He's, this is a nice young person who, he's not standing and towering over me and giving me some kind of information. He's sitting there to tell me, oh, how are you doing today? He's engaging. But definitely, I agree with you that, of course, based on the culture that we're in, of course, and then depending on who your audience is, if you're walking into a room where it's an adult in there and you're the younger one, yeah, you may not just want to come in and take a seat because you may come across as disrespectful. Definitely, I agree. All right. Ifoma had her hand up.
Yes, thank you. Just to contribute to what you've just said, like you said about taking that seat, it does have a way of calming you down as a patient who a healthcare provider is coming to speak to, because you're walking into the room, you're worried, you don't know what to expect, and then someone calms you down by greeting you. Because I recall going into a hospital a few months ago with my son, and as soon as I got there, the nurses, everyone said, hello. They already knew his name. They said, hello, T, I am so-and-so person. That really calmed my son down because he was really worried about going into hospital. And I was worried as a parent taking a child into hospital. So like you have said, that for the healthcare providers on this webinar, if you do that, as in speaking as a patient coming to a hospital, everyone's terrified of a hospital. So if healthcare providers do this for patients, and even if you have to come and sit beside someone's bed, you could, considering the culture, you've made the person at ease, and then you say, can I take a seat? You're engaging with your patient. You might not realize it, but you're making your patient feel at ease. So that's just my feedback, speaking from a patient's point of view. If someone does that to me, that really helps. So thank you.
And also, just to add something to what you said, Ifoma, obviously we have to take culture into perspective, but speaking as a clinician and healthcare professional, when you come in and stand, sometimes the patient thinks you're going to just talk to them for 2 seconds and you'll be gone. I think taking a seat also lets the patient know that you're actually there to focus on them and to hopefully answer whatever questions they have, and sort of leave them satisfied, with that interaction, so if culture, supports it and there's an opportunity to sit, I would also recommend that, sort of speaking from the healthcare perspective. Obviously, we know different cultures would, present certain challenges. We have to take that into account, but if the opportunity presents, it's highly recommended.
I definitely agree. Definitely. Thank you so very much. Okay, Mosumola raised her hand. Hello.
Good morning, everyone. I would say as well, just to piggyback that with a clinician coming in and standing, it kind of makes the patients a little afraid that they're ready to get a bad news. Because usually it seems like when clinicians come in and they're leaving in a hurry, they're giving you bad news and then rushing out the door. So I totally agree that, having clinician come in and taking their time and sitting beside the patient will make the patient feel a little more comfortable.
Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. Thank you all. Thank you all for engaging and providing this feedback. I think this is very helpful for all of us to hear that. Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. All right. So this slide just pretty much shares 3 key traits of positive patient-provider relationship. So the first one is empathy. I think that it's very, very important that as we express clinician empathy, we're using that same golden rule: treat others the way you would like to be treated. Very, very important. When, we've talked about that just now with everybody's feedback, that empathy, treating others. Somebody's coming they're in a hospital, they're at the clinic. If they're very concerned, how would you treat them? I think that's very, very important. All right, strong communication. We've talked about strong communication. Very important to be able to communicate with, your patients, with these patients who are, sometimes I mentioned, they may be scared. Sometimes they don't really know what's going on. I think having that great conversation or that communication with them is also important. I talked earlier about the teach back. So here, and that's part of strong communication, is also making sure that you are not just communicating what needs to be done, you're also teaching them how to take care of themselves. You're also teaching them if it's medication they need. You are asking them to tell you exactly what you've just taught them, helping them to take better care of themselves, even in that healthcare setting. I think that's very, very important. So strong communication is key. And then shared decision making. Oh, that's the type of one. So shared decision making, it just simply means that now that they know, they are also very interested, and also they're also part of that decision making about their own health. Very, very important that when we make decisions, of course, as clinicians, that we're also taking into consideration the patients. They also have a say in that conversation, in that communication. Very, very important. I think these 3 key traits are important. The empathy, treat others the way you would like to be treated. Make sure that you continue to communicate. A lot of times, or there's some doctors who just feel that, well, you're just the patient. So they don't communicate. They feel like that the patients may not understand. And then when the patients are asking for information, sometimes they may be a little bit defensive because they feel that, well, you don't understand. No, in this environment, we definitely want to make sure that we carry our patients along in every area. I understand that data is being collected from the provider, from the nurses, as we're collecting data, COVID-19 data, maybe sharing that back to the students, making sure that or that the schools or whoever you are providing that data back to, that they understand exactly, what this means, what the impact is, and what they need to do going forward. I think is very, very important. That's where the strong communication comes in. And then the shared decision making, like I said, is one that helps, all of us make those decisions. And I think that way we are richer for it. Next slide, please. So in this slide, I'll be talking to you a little bit about the different communication styles. So there are 4 dominant communication styles. All right, it's the passive. There's one called the passive. There's the passive aggressive. There's the aggressive, and then the assertive. So the assertive one definitely is the one that we all want to strive for. And depending on the kind of communication and who our audience is, sometimes people are known to use the different communication styles. But at all times, what you want to strive for is to be assertive. Awesome, thank you. I definitely agree. And sometimes I think that's the problem, that some clinicians do not talk to their patients in layman's language. They feel that they may not understand that. But I think the goal of every clinician, in order to be able to communicate effectively, is to actually be able to do that, to speak in a language that they understand, and to do that teach back, making sure that your patient can speak back to you what you've taught them or what you've communicated. All right, so for passive, so what exactly is a passive style of communication? So this is one that has the mindset that others' rights and their needs take precedence over mine. No one's rights and needs should ever take precedence over yours. This is the passive one. This is where whoever engages in passive communication is emotionally dishonest, they're indirect, they're inhibited, they're self-denying, they're always blaming, they're always apologizing for things that they did not do, that is outside of their control. Being passive serves no one. It serves no one. The next one is the passive aggressive. This is the one where the mindset is that I subtly make clear that my rights and my needs prevail. You are passive aggressive. You are putting it out there that your needs prevail, but you are not coming right out to say that. This is emotionally dishonest. It's also indirect. It's self-denying at first. You pretend to be passive, and then you become self-enhancing at the expense of others later. This is not what we should be engaging in. And then, of course, the third one is the aggressive one. This is where your mindset is, I boldly insist that my rights and my needs prevail. No one should ever be like that, because this is inappropriately honest. It's direct, it's expressive, it's attacking, it's blaming, it's controlling, it's self-enhancing at the expense of others. You know, all these go against the golden rule. You know, if you want to treat others the way, you know, that you would like them to treat you. So the fourth one that I mentioned, this is the one in green. The mindset here is that I clearly express that we both have rights and needs. So it's appropriately honest, it's direct as well, it's not passive, it's self-enhancing, it's expressive, it's self-confident, it's empathetic to emotions of everyone who is involved. And this doesn't mean you would be a doormat. It just simply means that, you know, you think of others, you know, you put other people's consideration into yours. You're not just thinking only about yourself. You are assertive, you speak up, you are confident. We should all strive definitely to be assertive. Right, so looking for time here. All right, next slide. Okay, so fillers. All right, so some of you may know what fillers are. Well, a lot of people use fillers. I hear fillers all the time. I think my ears are trained now to hear fillers all the time. I think for me, what is the most embarrassing is that people use fillers with no shame. I mean, it has become now part of their language. So I'll tell you what fillers are. So fillers are sounds. They are words or phrases spoken in conversation by one participant to signal to others that he or she has paused, but they're not done speaking. So for example, what is a filler? Like, kind of, well, sort of. So these are words or sounds that people use that instead of just pausing, if you are speaking, if you're waiting for the next line, and I hear this everywhere. I hear it in the workplace. I hear directors, executive leaders, you know, speaking with this kind of language. And every time I hear it, I'm like, I really want to come and provide a communication class to you all in this meeting. So that way, because it's very hard not to use these fillers, because somehow these words or these sounds are sounds that people use. So they become part of your nonverbal. You bring them on without even thinking. I think the biggest thing for us as individuals who want to speak or communicate effectively is to listen or look out for those. When I use my fillers, I pick up on them right away in my mind. I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have used that. People don't pick up on them, but I pick up on them. And it's the reason why I still use fillers is because it's very hard to cut them out completely. Very, very hard. But if you start to pay attention to them, then you will minimize them, and hopefully someday you can get rid of them. So different languages have different characteristic filler sounds. So in English, the most common filler sounds are you know. When I was putting this presentation together, I was thinking about, you know, different culture, and I was thinking like in Yoruba, maybe in Nigeria, in Africa, in Nigeria, then maybe some of the filler words would be you know, so words like that. I think that those are words that really shouldn't have any place in our communication if we want to be effective communicators. Next slide, please. So these are examples of fillers. I mentioned the I think that, you know, what I'm trying to say is, you see, I mean, you know, those kind of words are those are filler phrases. Or filler words are, so basically, we can use basically in everything. Basically, possibly, relatively, fairly. So let's start to look out for these words. And how can you look out for these words? You may not even know that you are saying them. You can have people, you can have friends listen out. My daughter has been catching me all the time. She keeps saying that I say men. Oh man, you know, so she'll pick up on that and say, you just use that. And I told her, don't pick up on only that one, pick up on everything else that I'm saying, so that way it'll help me to lose those filler words. Another thing that you can do to catch your fillers is you can record yourself. When you have a presentation with a group of people, record yourself and then go back and listen to those words. See, you know, what words that you use a lot. The word you know is another one that I tend to use. You know. All right, so I want to hear from folks in the chat. What are your filler words? Or did you not even notice that you have filler words? Or you're the kind of person who hears other people use filler words. What What are your pet peeves concerning this? I hear the filler words all the time. When I'm in meetings, I hear our executive leaders use them. And in my mind, I'm like, I gotta have a class on this one, because there's something to be said for you using those words. But there's another thing with you not even knowing that that's a problem, or that's something that you want to try to fix. Any filler words? What are your filler words? I want to hear them. As in?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. Love it. And then the worst part is that there's some people who drag that for like 30 seconds. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's bad enough you are using it. Why are you dragging that thing? No one should hear it. I say, I don't know a lot, as in.
So
basically, yes. So those are words that we definitely, if you don't need it, you don't need it. Another way, and I think I have another slide that talks about how we can eliminate those filler words. Yes, that's in the next one, all right. Any more? We'll take on a couple more, and then, because they're thinking, correct, I agree, definitely. The reason why they're dragging it, yes, is because they are correct. So they are thinking through the next, what is the next thing? A lot of my leaders in the workplace, my goodness, those ones drag it so much, and I'm like, you're not supposed to be saying anything to begin with. You definitely don't want to drag. You want to, you want to keep it quiet. Okay, anything else? Any more filler words that we haven't heard before we move into the next one? All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so here are 5 steps to help you eliminate fillers. The first one is to organize your thoughts. If you pause to think about what you want to say before you say it, there's a higher likelihood that you wouldn't use the or drag it for 1 hour. There's a higher likelihood that you wouldn't do that. I talked earlier about keeping the 3 C's, about the goal of communication. We talked about clear, concise, remember? You want to keep your words short, simple, and sweet. You want to be concise. Okay. Do we have somebody? I think somebody is not on mute. So you always want to use simple, neat, and precise words that are easy to comprehend, and they're not too complex for your listener. Very, very important. And then you can also want to say the filler word, but only in your head. Can you try that? So think of the word you wanted that you want to say, and then continue with the rest of your sentence. So if you don't say it out, if you keep that quiet in your mind, so you've still said it, but now we can't even hear it, and you still continue to sound very confident, you're communicating effectively. Another way to eliminate your filler is to practice in front of the mirror. And also record your speech. I talked about that, and listen to it. This will give you a clear idea of the fillers that you unconsciously use. A lot of us use unconscious fillers. By recording yourself, practicing in front of a mirror, you'll be able to hear that. Pause is another very important one. You want to pause and take a break. You want to try to take a break, especially if you have a tendency to speak really fast. A lot of us have that tendency. So you want to pause between your sentences. And there's nothing wrong with pauses, especially when you use the pauses effectively. So these are all 5 ways to eliminate fillers. Anybody else have any other ideas of how else we can eliminate our fillers? Any thoughts? Anything that hasn't been covered here?
So I used to struggle with speaking publicly. I think that has a lot to do with my personality as an introvert, and having to speak in front of, I just did just now, so that's one of my filler words. Now I give presentations in front of a lot of people, and for me, initially it's nerves. I get a little nervous, but once I start speaking, I get comfortable. I'm very confident of my content. I just have to get through that first bump of interfacing with the people. So I'm not a comedian, and I'm not saying crack jokes, but I first start with something that breaks the ice. And once I can get people's attention, I see 1 or 2 people smile, then I can basically ride on that and present without necessarily thinking or feeling I'm presenting to a large room. So I've tried that. I presented at a conference to almost 5,000 people, and I was so nervous getting up on stage. And the first thing I did was I made fun of my credentials being too long. And a lot of people laughed. And once they started laughing, I started my presentation and I was able to use that.
Such an awesome example. That's such an awesome example. The amazing thing about people who speak, who do a lot of public speaking, is that if you tell them, if you're close with them and you know them personally, and you tell them, oh, I was nervous, they're always going to say, oh, wow, you didn't come across as nervous. I remember in one of my courses a long time ago, I mentioned that to one of my instructors about being nervous. And he said, being nervous is a good thing. It just simply means that you care enough about this presentation to want to do or to make a great impression. And that's why sometimes you're nervous. So being nervous definitely is a good thing as you start your presentation. And of course, once you get into it, then it becomes just you having a conversation with 5,000 people. Another thing that I learned also about public speaking, I used to be so nervous about it a long time ago. Over time, as I did it more and more, I became more comfortable. Of course, I'm always still nervous. I was nervous about today's presentation, even though I've given this presentation to so many people. One thing that helps me calm my nerves is that I take myself out of the equation. It's not about me, it's about the information that I would like to share. The first time that clicked in my mind, I think I became much better at presenting, because in my mind, I'm like, well, I want people to walk away with something. I want them to be able to learn that. If my focus is on teaching folks to eliminate any bad conversation behaviors, then I take that focus away from myself and then I focus on the message. And in that way, I'm not as nervous. I don't worry about the audience. I'm just focused on the message that I'm trying to pass. That has worked for me. Of course, different things work for different people. Yeah. And any other thoughts before we move on to the next slide? Thank you so very much, Dr. Bin, for sharing that. And thank you to everyone. There was one chat that came through very quickly. Somebody had mentioned that in some previous class that they were in, that there was a place for fillers. I really want to hear about that. Dr. Bim, can you read that, please?
I have it up here as well. I don't mind reading it.
Yes, please go ahead and read it.
So it says, in another session I attended a while back, we were told about the usefulness of filler words in brainstorming sessions. I learned they help to bring thoughts into proper perspective. What are your thoughts? And this was by Kay. Yeah.
I don't know that filler words help you bring thoughts into proper perspective. I don't know that, because filler words don't add to your conversation.
My thoughts about that, I actually provided a response. I think while brainstorming, you don't have to organize your thoughts necessarily. So filler words might be allowable just to help with continuity and flow of thoughts. In proper communication and presentation, it's the opposite. You actually want to arrange your thoughts properly so that you communicate clearly. So I wonder if that's where that came from.
Definitely, that's possible, yes. Because when you are brainstorming, you don't have to worry about being proper. So maybe that's what that is. But at the same time, because filler words, you're nonverbal, they become part of you. And I think that the best way to combat them is to always be aware of them. Because if you're saying, well, when we're brainstorming, it's okay to use our filler words, but when we're speaking, it's not okay. When does your brain shut off? A lot of times in our communication, we're influenced by what we hear. A lot of times we're influenced because people use those words. You will find that you may not be using a filler word, but if you hang around people that use the same filler words all the time, the next thing you know, in your conversation, you're using those words as well. So yes, definitely when you're brainstorming, then maybe there are no rules. Use all the filler words, but then when you're speaking, you want to definitely make sure that you avoid those filler words by saying them quietly until you break away from them. Like I mentioned, they're very, very hard to break because you hear them or people speak them all the time. So it becomes a part of you. I think the biggest thing is to be able to recognize that you've said those words and then working on breaking them. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so another one is uptalk. All right, avoiding uptalk. Uptalk, I don't know if you've heard that. Another word for uptalk is upspeak. So uptalk describes the upward inflection used to make a statement sound like a question. It's sometimes called upspeak. A lot of us, and I think it's also a cultural thing. I think it's a function of where we are or where we live or where we grow up. Because I don't know that folks in Nigeria, I don't know that I've picked that up from them, but here, because of social media and, well, maybe there too, I noticed that a lot of people use uptalk. When you want to ask a question, and uptalk is also nonverbal. When you want to ask a question, of course, there's a question mark. Can we meet to discuss today's plans? So that's a question. But when you're actually making a statement, I wanted to meet to discuss the plans. It should be a regular expression, but a lot of times when we're speaking, our statements sound like questions instead of statements. And the problem with uptalk or upspeak is that we come across as unsure. Are you going out today? That's a question. Oh, I wanted I was hoping to have completed that today. No, I was hoping to have completed that today. So I am hoping that you can see what the difference is in that. And a lot of times people don't even know that they are up talking or up speaking until maybe you record yourself or you have somebody call you out on that. A lot of times when we speak, we're making our statements sound like questions. Gender roles. A lot of time, women, the female gender is usually one that makes or does the uptalk or the upspeak a lot. But there are men who also do that. In some of my meetings, when I hear a guy who's up speaking, it sounds so foreign to me because a lot of times I don't hear that. A lot of times women are the ones who are making statements, but their statements come across like they're asking questions. To be an effective communicator, you want to speak, you want to make sure that your words you're landing your words. You are making those regular expressions. You want to avoid uptalk or upspeak as much as you can. All right. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, pause. I've alluded to pause in quite a few of our previous slides. What is pause? All right, pause is a rest. It's the hesitation. It's a temporary stop, emphasis. So in place of your filler words, you want to use your pause. You pause when you're trying to gather your thoughts. You pause when you are going from one thoughts to another, maybe one sentence to another, you want to pause. So it's an interval of silence. It may vary in length. The speaker may use pause to enhance the message delivery or fill the pause needlessly and distract the audience from the message. So that's another thing. You want to make sure that your pauses are effective, and you don't want to make sure that they are not ineffective. Some pauses are effective, they're efficient because they're short. You're catching your breath. You're not going on, and you're not filling your pauses with your fillers. The ineffective pauses are the ones that you pause for 1 minute and people are wondering, can you just hurry up? And I think that may be a cultural thing too, because that was something that I struggled with for a while. I'm accustomed to people talking on and just landing their thoughts. And then, when I meet people who they're taking forever, sometimes I jump into their conversations, not meaning to do that. And then I step back and I'm like, oh, my apologies, go ahead and finish. So I think that's very important. There was another point I was going to make earlier when Dr. Beam had talked. When he was talking about his presentations, if you noticed, he wasn't talking as fast. He was slow, because also in my mind, I was thinking that he was trying not to use his filler words. And that's what you find. People who do presentations, who are trying not to use their filler words, they pause in their conversations. They are not talking too fast. There's a rest that comes when they are making that conversation. Another thing that I wanted to mention about pauses also is about the cultural, because a lot of us tend to talk so fast and we're afraid that if we pause, somebody's going to jump into our conversation. We end up not pausing. We keep going on and on. But try to pause. Try to pause when you're speaking. It'll help you gather your thoughts. It'll help you sound authentic. It'll help you sound confident. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. So how can we improve our pauses? I don't think there's anything new here. I said, record yourself when you speak and play it back. Oh, then this is another one. Play it back, but don't watch it. Just listen. So focus on the pauses that you make or the ones that you should have made. So listen for that. If you're like me, or if you're like a lot of people who talk really fast and who sometimes forget to pause, try this. Take a book from your bookshelf and read out loud for a few minutes. Every time you come to a comma, pause for 1 second. When you can come to the end of a sentence, pause for 2 seconds. When you reach the end of a paragraph, pause for 3 seconds. I know, yeah, it's going to feel artificial, and this is not how you normally pause, but this will help you be aware. It'll help bring that awareness of what pausing is like. So you can practice that. And then practice pausing when you speak with others during the day. Listen to what friends and family and colleagues are saying, and then wait a second or two before you speak. I think somebody had that also in the chat about pausing first, 10 seconds before you also respond. Any questions? Any thoughts before we move on to the next slide? Let me see what the next slide is.
Someone in the chat, I think Mr. Olumide Ojo said, thank you. I think it's kind of all of us are saying thank you so much. But I wanted to ask if you could give some more examples. I'm not exactly sure which examples he was referring to. I think at the time you were talking about pausing. This was just a few minutes ago. So I think that might be what he was referring to. But Mr. Ojo, if you don't mind being clear on what you mean by more examples. Okay. I think we can move on for a bit. And if he puts it up in the chat, I would get back to that.
I think there's a video of the power of the pause. I don't know if we have time to watch that video, if that would be helpful. But we can
if you can share the link, yeah.
It's in the slide. It's in the slide on pauses. If you go to the.
Okay, so I'll see if I can pull it out and
yes, and just drop that in there. Okay. All right. So let's go to our next slide, please. All right. So this slide just talks about your communication daily practice. What are some of the things that we can do to be better communicators? You want to commit to conciseness. We've talked about that. How do you commit to conciseness? By thinking about what you want to communicate. If you think about it, you can put it together very well and make sure that it falls into those 3 C's. You want to craft concise overall messages. Every time you send a message, you want to make sure it's nice and concise. It hits the point without going on and on, so you don't lose your audience. You want to use concise sentences that pop. You want to structure your thoughts into points. I've talked about using effective pauses. You want to avoid fillers. Very, very important to try to avoid fillers when you're speaking, when you're communicating. And then you want to use confident nonverbals. Confident nonverbals, I've talked about that. The eye contact, using your hands, your hand gestures a little bit, standing tall, being assertive in your conversations, in your communication, making sure that whatever it is that you're communicating, you come across as authentic. All right, let's go to our next slide, please. All right, so what are our takeaway reminders from our session? I talked about you smiling. You want to find joy in whatever you communicate. It will make you smile when you speak. Very, very important that you do that. You want to practice pausing when speaking with others during your day. You want to listen to what your friends and family and colleagues are saying, and then you want to wait a second or two at least before you speak. You want to begin to actively use pause to replace your filler words. Very, very important, especially in a world where a lot of people don't even know that using filler words really isn't optimal or ideal. You want to definitely start to listen out for that. I mentioned that because of our nature as human beings, every time we hear people use so many filler words, somehow in our subconscious, we start to use those filler words. Mm-hmm. People that you know, that you trust, that you love, that respect you, that you respect, you can definitely share the idea of replacing those filler words with pausing. If you notice that somebody uses filler words all the time, you can say something to them about that. Because at the end of the day, you want us all to be great communicators. You want people to be able to speak in ways that they carry or they show their very best self. Next slide, please. All right, so homework. This is homework for everyone who's on this call. Wow. Yeah, I guess you didn't know you came for homework. This is a lecture after all. So I want you to record a 5-minute video of yourself on any topic of your choice. Any topic, do a 5-minute video of, and if you don't have time to do the video, go ahead and record on your phone. You can just hit the record button. Any topic of your choice, talk about it, listen to the recording, and then come back. What surprised you? What filler words did you notice? I don't know if anybody picked up on when I said listen to the recording, I went up. So that's an example of up speak or up talk. Listen to the recording. What I should have said was listen to the recording. There's no question mark there. So you want to always make sure that you land your sentences. So listen to the recording. What surprised you? What filler words did you notice? These are some of the things that would help you and help others to become better communicators. Next slide. So final thoughts. Communication is one area that we can all work on and improve on. I'm sure we've seen that in today's lecture. We all must strive to communicate clearly, truthfully, and lovingly. I've talked about empathy with patients, empathy with everyone that we come in contact with. We must communicate in a way that glorifies God and reflects Christ. That's something that I put on all my slides. It's something that I truly believe in. And it's also very important to lead by example and set a deliberate positive tone with your communication. No one is perfect, so we will sometimes fall short of our communication, but recognizing when we've fallen short of that and making a promise to ourselves that we'll do better is very, very important. I think that ends my presentation list. I think the last one is just questions, yeah. So thank you so very much. We'll open the floor for any questions at this time.
So I think if we can go back to what Mr. Ojo asked about earlier, he just wanted some more examples of upspeak and pauses. I know you just gave one now at the end of the of the session, so I think it would be nice for us to see some more of those.
Yeah, so upspeak, a lot of times we're using upspeak without even knowing we're upspeaking, and that's what I did. Every time there's no question mark at the end of your sentence, but if you listen to your sentence and it sounded like you asked a question instead of making a statement, that's upspeak. And the problem with upspeak is that it comes across like you're not sure about what you're saying. You lose your confidence. When I'm trying to, let me think about an example. If you're trying to do something, I don't know. So there's so many different examples for upspeak, because now I'm using even my filler words while I'm thinking through it. But upspeak is just when, upspeak is when you're using the question mark at the end of the statement instead of just landing it, which was the example that I gave in that presentation, in that last slide.
Thank you.
So glad, so glad. Yes.
I hope I'm not taking all the time. I recently took a communication course myself. And one thing I learned there as well was when you're communicating, trying to present an idea, you should mix in some positive as well as negative messaging in the ratio of, for every one negative message you send, or at least a negative kind of communication that you should have 3 positive ones to kind of balance out that ratio. I don't know what your thoughts on that. I think it kind of shows the key point of that was that it shows the humanity of whoever's presenting and kind of let everybody know that, yes, this is not just like supposed to be a perfect kind of product or whatever you're putting across. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that, if that's something you've come across or if it's something you've seen or heard about, and what you think about that as well.
Yes, definitely. I've definitely heard of the sandwich method. I don't know if you've heard of the sandwich method that says, when you want to share information, of course, you start first with a positive, you put the negative in there, and then you close the sandwich with another positive. Definitely, we're all human. And I try to show that even in today's lecture, that the things that I've mentioned that we should try to eliminate are things that it's a big struggle. I've used even some of those words, even in today's presentation, to show that, and whenever I use them, sometimes I smile or I laugh. So if you've seen me laughing or smiling, it means that I've caught myself doing that. I think that's the first step. Some people don't even know what they're not doing correctly. So I think that's the biggest thing that we want to pay attention to, that you're paying attention to what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. To answer your question about communication and the negative and the positive, a lot of times not all communication is positive communication. Unfortunately, we have to share bad news as well. I like what we talked about earlier. If a doctor comes into a room, even if they want to share bad news, having a seat in a patient's, where you have a seat, I'm leaning in and I want to trust you. You start with a good one. Even when you share the bad one, you are there also to provide that reach back to say, don't worry, although this is the situation that we're in right now, but we're on top of it, we're going to work through this. There's something about that makes it even more palatable when you've shared that kind of information. So I think it's always being empathetic. Every time you share the golden rule, it's also very important in healthcare. Always treat others like you would like them to be treated, or like you would like to be treated. And then also be empathetic. Always think about them. Oh, wow, I'm going to share this news. If this news was coming to me, how would I like to receive that? I'm sure that at some point or the other in our lives, we've all received news that maybe could have been better delivered, or that news that were better accepted because they were delivered a little bit better. And anybody else, please feel free to jump in and let's make this interactive.
Yeah, I just want to say this is phenomenal. Great job, great job, great job. I mean, I learned so much. I mean, those fillers, honestly, like you don't even, you do it, you mention them or you say them unconsciously. So, when, recording the 5-minute recording, I think I'm going to do that myself, and I also catch myself sometimes laughing exactly what you just said. I guess it's in the blood. So, but I think, that's just a great, that's a great way to reflect, on the way we use our words, the way, those filler words could actually impact our sentences and just, that path for that continuous improvement. So thank you so much for that tip. Great job, sis.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a very interesting comment in the chat. And this is from Falashade Oluwatos, and she's one of the Health for Nigeria nurses. And she's actually responsible for the Smiling Nurse segment. And her question is, how do I overcome the influence my personality has on my communication competency? I smile too much. It affects my communication sometimes.
Okay, so we did talk about that. We've talked about being genuine and authentic. So you got to be careful. If you're communicating bad news, you will not be smiling too much there. If you're communicating good news, you're communicating by smiling. It makes you put people at ease. So unless if you've gotten into trouble for smiling too much, then that's something that you want to check out. But if you're sharing information, if you want to be taken seriously, that's another one. If you are smiling and laughing all the time, they may be wondering what's going on here. Why are you laughing? What's so funny? But when you smile and you are genuine, you're authentic, in presentation, you come across very warm, you come across very approachable. It always helps your patients. It helps people to feel at ease. I think knowing when to smile and to the degree, of smiling and providing that information, I think that's very, very key. So just knowing your audience, if you're sharing information that is not very, that is not very happy, then I wouldn't be smiling too much. But if I want to reassure somebody after sharing that news, don't worry, we're working on it. That may put somebody at ease. So I think that's another one that you definitely want to pay attention to. Why are you smiling so much? Is that just who you are? Or then also being empathetic, understanding the situation and making sure that your smile and all that is appropriate for the situation. I think that's going to be important.
So
anybody else?
Taking any other questions? I know Mrs. Olatunji will have to go at some point. She's leading a meeting at 9:30. I have to say that, I've attended many presentations. I've given many presentations, and your slides are probably one of the most beautiful and communicative slides I've seen in any presentation. Thank you so much for accepting to come present to us, but also, giving this the seriousness it deserved. Communication is not something a lot of us think we need. So I was a little nervous, about how this would be received, but we've gotten a lot of feedback, and just based on the comments and the questions today, and people walking away actually learning something about themselves and how to improve upon their communication, we have you to thank. Thank you so much for taking the time, and also for giving us this presentation, for giving us an opportunity to stop and reflect on the way we communicate and how to make that better.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this platform. Thank you. I am very, very excited to speak about communication. That's something that if I had my way, I would communicate all day. I would help people become better communicators. So thank you for this platform. If everybody, or if one person, if everybody walked away with something today, I think that my work has been done. So thank you so very much. Definitely a great pleasure to see so many of you, family and friends, who have come out to become better communicators. Thank you so very much for taking up your time. I know that here in the East Coast, it's kind of early. Even in the South, some folks even dialed in from everywhere. It was very early to have done that. So thank you all for giving me this platform. Very, very excited. Looking forward to everyone becoming better communicators. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
And let me also thank everyone that came to attend. I'm catching myself with my filler words. Thank you to everyone who took the time. I know it's really early here in North America, but in Nigeria, I know it's afternoon. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for your support of Health for Nigeria. I have family, I have friends, my old alumni association, Federal Government College Idoani, they're always here. And to a lot of our sponsors and collaborators. So thank you very much for the time. Thank you very much for your support. I want to highlight two of our sponsors today who are actually here. Mrs. Fumi Fadayomi, who is the founder and CEO of Acclaim Home Care. Thank you very much for your sponsorship and donation. For those who don't know, as Mr. Osho said during his introduction, our flagship program is the Nurses School program, where we go into rural public schools and we renovate, we provide healthcare equipment, and we place a nurse there. And the goal is to increase health promotion, disease prevention in rural areas. And those nurses actually end up taking care of the community. And that's how we plan to change the healthcare sector. So thank you very much, Father Yomi. And also,
sorry, I just muted that, sorry.
All right, so also Mrs. Tosin Alateju, who is also the founder and CEO of Food and Care for All. She has also agreed to partner with Health for Nigeria to do the same thing, to sponsor a school. Her nonprofit organization provides food, to not only individuals in the US, but she's also doing that in Nigeria. So there are a lot of people around the world who really are giving back to our home country and to what we do. So thank you very much to both of you. And for anyone else who is interested in supporting the work we do, or just interested in attending these lecture series once a month to learn something that may change your life or change the lives of people you interact with, stay tuned. We'll continue to send the invitations. But thank you so much once again for taking the time. We truly appreciate it. Take care, stay safe, put on your mask and socially distance if you can.
Thank you all so much. And as usual, I'll just play a short video as we're all stepping out of the lecture. And again, a big thank you to everybody for showing up, and a big thank you to Mr. Olatunji for taking us to this lecture.
Thank you.
A nation with a population of over 200 million people, with only 35,000 doctors. That is one doctor to 53,000 Nigerians. The healthcare allocation is 3.5% of the GDP, $5 per person per year. WHO recommends 5%. This explains why our healthcare system is the way it is. Patients are not being attended to. Government hospitals are overcrowded. Health workers are overwhelmed. Private specialists are unaffordable. Something has to be done. To tackle these issues, Health for Nigeria believes the healthcare sector needs an inspired and well-motivated group of young leaders to canvass and act for excellence in the healthcare standards of Nigeria. Our team of healthcare professionals and leaders are committed to improving access to healthcare for all Nigerians, especially our children. With our nurses in all basic schools in Nigeria, we give children basic health education and support across Nigeria. Health for Nigeria.
All right. Thanks again, everyone.
Nigeria, a nation with a population of over 200 million people, with only 35,000 doctors. That is one doctor to 53,000 Nigerians. The healthcare allocation is 3.5% of the GDP, $5 per person per year. WHO recommends 5%. This explains why our healthcare system is the way it is. Patients are not being attended to. Government hospitals are overcrowded. Health workers are overwhelmed. Private specialists are unaffordable. Something has to be done. To tackle these issues, Health for Nigeria believes the healthcare sector needs an inspired and well-motivated group of young leaders to canvass and act for excellence in the healthcare standards of Nigeria. Our team of healthcare professionals and leaders are committed to improving access to healthcare for all Nigerians, especially our children. With our nurses in all basic schools in Nigeria, we give children basic health education and support across Nigeria. Health for Nigeria, health equity for all Nigerians.
All right, thank you again, everybody, for coming. We really appreciate showing up, and we hope that you join us next time as well. Have a good morning, good afternoon, and enjoy the rest of your day.